Hello everybody, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in again. If you made it this far, please remember to like, comment, and or subscribe to the content that I'm putting out. It'll go a very long way to provide feedback to me and continue to grow the channel and get other people to see the valuable content as well. So appreciate it. If you could do that for me, and we will pick up where we left off last time. We discussed, or I guess we finished up the discussion around multiple view types, and we built a little, yeah, here it is, built a little list that now has a header and a footer here. I know towards the end of the last video I discussed trying to put that big tile up as the header, but I actually want to touch on something else that'll be a little simple or a little simpler, but yet is a pretty important thing for you to understand that I have not discussed so far at any length. So I want to talk a little bit about why it actually is called a recycler view, or a little bit more about what a where the recycling part of things is coming into play. So we haven't talked about this UI element before, but it is a checkbox. Should be pretty self-explanatory here, and you'll see the UI in a second if you can't already. But it's pretty straightforward. You can see it's actually a little bit larger than this text view as far as height goes. So we're just going to constrain the bottom to the bottom of parent, and now this will be listed in the middle. I don't know, let's write the word like valid or something, and it would be yay or nay. And we'll just do margin and 16 dp. And so there's kind of a little checkbox here. As you would imagine, when you click it, it toggles its state between being checked or unchecked, and you can kind of actually listen for these checks and the interaction with these particular, the check state, I think it's called, and do something with that, true or false or whatever. So this is actually a perfect example of it. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to rerun this app real quick, and I'm going to check this first one and the first one only. And I'm just going to continue scrolling through the list, and element 12 is checked, and so is 24 and 36. And now if we go back, 12, 1, 24, 36, 84, all of these elements are now checked that were not checked, and now the first element is no longer checked, and the 10th element is checked, and the 22nd element is checked. So there's some really funky stuff going on here, and you can see as I snap through, I mean, look at this, yeah. So like we've discussed before, the power of the recycler view, at least from a performance standpoint, is each one of these views here that we've called our simple view holder, I think it's called. Each one of these here, there's maybe 7 of them on screen, and we've discussed there's a few off screen, and there's a few off screen down here as well. And then as you scroll, they're kind of rebound, and the UI is reused, and the view holder itself is reused, but the the position changes, or the data that's bound to it is changed, right? And so that's why we have element 5 here, and then 6 here, and 7 here, but they're really all the same layout. They're kind of just like replicas of one another. And so the reason here why we check the first thing and now we scroll the list and other ones are continued to be checked is because of that, is because internally this checked state is being stored, and sometimes it's actually being leaked from view holder to view holder because we are not explicitly setting it anywhere. because we are not explicitly setting it or not setting it. So, for instance, the reason that every other one of these elements has a different background color is because every single time this function is invoked, we are determining based upon the position which color it should be and setting it. So it doesn't matter if element 43 right now has this grayish background, and then when we scroll to element 2, it might have been, the same recycled view holder that was here, but it obviously has a white background instead of a gray background, and has the correct background based upon the position, and that's because we're actually performing a calculation in the onBind function of the view holder, and we're applying the correct logic. There's no discussion here in the onBind about what to do with this checkbox. So because of that, the system sometimes the view sometimes remembers its position, or sorry, its status, and when this view is recycled from 54 to 66, it still thinks it's supposed to be checked because no one's telling it otherwise. It doesn't actually have any knowledge if it should or should not be checked, other than the fact that if it gets recycled in memory and it was previously checked, it's going to remain checked. In this case here, we actually have in the background color situation, we actually are telling the system every single time which color it should be. So by doing something like this in the onBind and actually setting the background color every single time, we've actually avoided this leak that we can that I'm showing you here between the different recycled view holders. So I guess it's just, I mean, it made the most sense to do the code, to do this logic here and then set the background color, but it's also just kind of ingrained in me to, in onBind, you need to basically bind the state of your UI every single time so that the UI stays consistent and it does not, you do not have this leak there. For instance, if we didn't set the text every single time, only on maybe a few of them, or once the button was clicked or something like that, once something happened, you might end up having things being, not recycled properly. Also, for instance, if we were to instead do okay, hold on. Sorry. If we were to instead of, yeah. If we were to instead have our logic just say, if position mod 2 equals 0, set the background color to something different, that'll work for the beginning, but yeah, here we go. As you see things getting flung and recycled, and we're kind of pushing the system to make use of its just recyclability, then you kind of get this ridiculous UI looking thing where at first I was like, maybe it was working, but yeah, eventually you'll get to the point where now all of them are just completely gray. So you could very easily see how this leak can be accomplished, and that's just because I guess of, like in this case, it's just a little like careless thought process, because you might intuitively think, yeah, that is true, that's what we want to accomplish, but you also need to handle the other case to essentially set all of these back to their regular text color or their regular background color to make sure that the leak does not happen. So because we're not doing anything with the checkbox, and now no matter how fast we fling it or whatever the case is, it's always going to stay true. But if we do that and start flinging it, I'm sure we can maybe get to the point where all or the majority of these things are checked, or maybe it just decides to flicker between different ones. Yeah. But anyway, hopefully you can see the point as to like why the recycler view kind of gets its name and what's going on under the hood, and then I guess some like catastrophic issues in the UI that you could be facing if you were not aware of that, or if you know, you're just a little careless in the code here. So in order to modify this the UI appropriately, we should probably end up getting a Boolean passed in to our onBind function, which will tell it, you know, if it should or should not be checked. So we're just going to go ahead and set an isChecked field. We're going to duplicate that and say checkbox is of type checkbox, and the ID okay. Oh, was I in the wrong class? No. All right, I guess the IDE just didn't pick that up. That's fine. And then at this point here, we're just going to say is checked. Sorry, not is checked. Checkbox dot is checked equals is checked. And so, sorry, this is a function to essentially set the checked field. Slightly confusing because it's basically referencing like the is checked, like well, I guess in this case it's m checked, the Boolean. But anyway, this is just a property syntax, I believe it's called, for Kotlin, to just set a particular property, and I just use is checked because I knew this was called is checked, and it just, you know, sounds good. And so here we're just going to very simply say like position mod 10 equals 0. So ideally you're going to have like some legitimate piece of logic here that would determine, you know, if that's checked or not. And so element 9, which is the 10th element 19, element 29. So every 10th item, no, it's actually the 11th item, because it's 0 to 9 is 10, plus 1 is no, because position, we're using the actual position here. So it evaluates it that every 10th element is going to be checked. And then if, for let's say we do 33 and we check 33 and we scroll it off the screen, so now that view has been recycled. If we scroll back down to 33, it's no longer checked. So ideally you're going to have, you know, some kind of logic for, which I guess in this case we do. We have a logic for every single position, but it feels like we only have logic for every 10th position. You know, maybe if we had a better, you know, data class here instead of just a string, you know, if we had maybe, I don't know, a list of contacts or something, and instead of a checkbox here, it would be like the little heart icon, and that would determine if they were your, or the star icon, and that would determine if they were in your favorites or not. You know, hopefully on each contact in the list, there would be a Boolean that would say like true or false if they were in the user's favorites, and then based upon that, you would, you know, draw the star filled in, or draw the star, you know, just like the outline of it, and then when they toggle, you know, they click the star to toggle it on and off. You would, you know, you would update your data behind the scenes, and you know, then when they scrolled off the screen and scrolled back, that person would or would not be a part of their, you know, favorites anymore. So I just want to show you checkbox dot. I think it's on. Yeah, it's on check change listener. And then oops, uh, true, false, true, false. And you can see that it just toggles between it when you check or uncheck a particular, when the user checks or unchecks this view. So you can kind of just basically hook into that, let's call it like that user interaction, and the system will provide a simple callback for you to do something with it. And then at this point, maybe you could say, if is checked, network call, or, else, I don't know, like delete or something like that, right? So you could just do something with this field in here, and so hopefully that makes sense as to like what I mean by how it's being recycled. You can see that this view, once it goes off screen and the data for it is destroyed, when we scroll it back on screen, all that it has is, the only knowledge that it has is of the data that gets passed back to it. So because that was invoked on the onBind function with isCheck being false, that's why this is no longer there, is no longer checked, right? And then no matter how many times you scroll away or scroll back, the 9th one is always going to be checked. Even if in this case we're not handling the unchecking case, so even if you scroll off and scroll back on, the 9th element will still be checked. So there's like an understanding that you need to keep your data in sync with your UI, and hopefully this simple example kind of showed you the reasoning behind that and how it can get out of whack, and just know that if things are thrown off, that it should be pretty easy to fix as long as you understand why it's leaking, why it's being recycled, or how it's being recycled, and with that in mind, you can proceed with a very like repetitive and declarative approach of like how you should be displaying your UI for every single element in the list, always. So, sorry we deviated from adding this to the list, but we will jump into that in the next video, and hopefully this kind of makes sense, and you get a better understanding of what is going on under the hood with the RecyclerView. So I hope to see you in the next one, and thanks for tuning in.